All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Coach Greg here with you. Obviously, I got Coach Dustin with me. Coach Brad is away, and he'll be back with us next week. So listen, tonight's going to be a great topic. I thought this would be a really fun one for the two of us to dive deep on. And listen, tonight I'm going to share with you the three pillars, the three secret pillars of mastering violence. I have secrets in quotation because there are no fucking secrets. But to many people, these three pillars remain a fucking mystery. They might as well be a secret. Well, tonight we're going to uncover them. We're going to break them down. And again, the second you understand these, it's going to turbocharge your growth in whatever art you're doing as it pertains to self-defense, but specifically in the weaponization process. So back in 30 seconds, cut to our intro. We'll be back. We're going to share with you the three secret pillars to mastering violence. Hang with us, everybody. Hey, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LeBuff, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, let's jump right into this tonight. Okay, I said that there are three secret pillars, secrets in quotations, because there are no secrets, but again, for some reason, people they don't really understand these three aspects or areas, and we're going to break them down for you tonight. So, I'm gonna give you kind of three things. I say there's three secret pillars. The next step down from that is I'm going to say overload, underload, and no load. Okay, that is the descriptor to which the degree to which people are fucking this shit up, right? In the first pillar, they are overloading. The second pillar, they are underloading, and the third pillar, there is for most people absolutely zero load. Okay, so, all right, here it is. We are a few minutes into it, and I'm going to share you the three secret pillars. Pillar number one. First one is information. Okay, information is the first of the secret pillars. You say, listen, information is not a fucking secret. Well, it is a secret. Why? Because let's go to the second descriptor that I listed, right? Information is pillar number one, and overload. People suffer from information overload. This is a massive problem. Okay, it is a massive fucking problem, and we're going to break this down. But I'm going to share all three with you. I want to get this all out right in the open so that we can just then kind of start peeling layers back. So information is the first secret pillar, and people suffer from dramatic and drastic information overload. Okay, the second pillar is implementation. Okay, implementation is the second pillar, and people suffer from underload. Okay, so people have an information overload and they have an implementation underload. And the third pillar is customization. And in that area, people have almost no load. Means nothing is happening there. They are not receiving any type of customization. Okay, so overload, underload, and no load is the problem. Okay, the secret pillars are information, implementation, and customization. Now, to start diving this down, the first thing I want to say is, I said, listen, I called these the three secret pillars to mastering the tool of violence. Well, these are the three secret pillars to fucking mastering anything. These three steps have to be in every process for growth. Information, implementation, customization. It's an immutable concept. It's like gravity. Okay, you drop a pen, drop a feather, drop a brick off the top of a building. They're all going to get down there at different rates of speed, but gravity is going to impact and affect them all. That's an immutable fucking concept. I don't care what you believe. I don't care how tall or fat, big, strong, stupid. I don't give a shit. Gravity is going to infect you. Step off a third story balcony, gravity is going to impact you. Information, implementation, and customization are immutable concepts. Okay, they're secrets that people don't fully understand, because oftentimes the things that are right in front of us, the things that are most obvious and most blatant, are the hardest for people to deal with because we try to complicate things. Matter of fact, industries are built around convoluting things, muddying the waters, so that people can't find their way through it, so that you need to pay somebody to navigate you, so to speak, right? Instead of just having a very simple, allowing people to understand simple process so that they can fucking do shit on their own. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean the water for you, okay? Information, implementation, customization, overload, underload, no load. Okay, so let's go with information first. Information is never the answer. Okay, and I say that because a lot of people think information is. Why? Because we live in an information-heavy time. The internet puts information at our fingertips instantaneously and with like in staggering levels of abundance. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, Dustin, I don't think would disagree with that information is everywhere and that we have access to staggering amounts of information in this day and age.
Yeah, and it's never been more available. It's never been cheaper. I mean, there's free information everywhere on anything, 100%. Right?
Well, if you have a plumbing problem, you're not a plumber, right? I'm not a plumber, but if you have a plumbing problem, what do? Do you call a plumber? Do you go to your Yellow Pages? No.
No, you go to YouTube, you watch 1 or 2 videos, you're like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. Probably specific right to the model of appliance you have. That's 100%. How much information is out there. Yes. And in 2.5 minutes, they walk you through whatever you need to know. And yeah, it's all right there, literally at your fingertips.
100%. And for, I don't know the percentage, maybe I'm off a little bit. Let's be modest. Let's say for 80% of the information that we need, like our plumbing problems, an automotive problem, anything, all these handyman type tasks, a lawn care maintenance problem, whatever it is, we Google the information is there, there's an abundance of that information, like you said, right down to specific model types, and that information really kind of helps us through implementation. Implementation is not a struggle. Like you literally pause the video, rewind the video, watch the video, stop the video, and just literally do what the video says, which is implementation, but it becomes effortless. Like I would say 80% of the stuff that we deal with is kind of that way. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot of skill, right? Like you don't typically need specific training. I think maybe the most that happens is you got to run out and buy a certain type of screwdriver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. A tool that you don't already have or something like that for sure.
Okay. So if information's the problem and we're kind of painting the picture, when it comes to like self-defense, when it comes to weaponize, when it comes to protecting yourself, and this is probably going to be true for all fields like where first responders exist, where you are dealing in life and death environments, critical decision making, those kinds of things, information overload is very dangerous. In the 80%, again, maybe it's 90%, but in the 80% of our lives, when we run into problems, again, my dishwasher's leaking, my whatever it is, my iPad is freezing up or doing something goofy, whatever it is, that information isn't an overload, right? We type in, Google search it, information comes out. We got a choice of 50 different videos. Some people look for the shortest video. Some people look for the longest video because they want more detailed information. But that abundance of information is actually helpful majority of the time. Would you agree with that? Because we want choice and we want selection and we're looking for very specific things.
Yeah.
Now, and we also go ahead.
I was going to say it's also very cataloged. In the sense of like I said, going back to the model number, like this would be a very different thing if it was like, there's 50 videos on how to fix home appliances. And that's all it said. And you're like, holy crap. Well, which one's the dishwasher? Which one's the dryer? Well, is it a Kenmore or a Frigidaire? Da, 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 da. So it's like part of why the implementation is so easy with what we're talking about is because someone's made it that way, which isn't the case with other things, which we're going to get into.
Which we're going to get 100%. That is actually a very, very good point, is how specific and cataloged, I love that word, that information can be, which again helps us from overload. Now, let's just address it because that was the perfect segue into it. When it comes to things like, defending against criminal violence, you can't catalog it the same way. Now, I know that it is being done. I know that you can look up and say, show me some knife defenses, show me the most effective, arm bars or ankle locks, or, show me a mass attack solution. But violence and most crisis situations, they don't stay within a catalog of information. Your dishwasher is your dishwasher. The year it was made, the model number, the circuit boards, it is what it fucking is, right? And it can change only when you sell that and buy something new, and then that is what it is. Violence is not like that. Most crisis is not like that. It's like saying, I'm going to look up how to fight a house. Your house is on fire. It's, fucking a flame is burning through your home, and you're looking up how to fight fires. It's you know what I mean? It's like, it is not just the fact that there is the presence of fire. It is, what is the accelerant? What are the conditionings? What is the wind? What is, you know what I mean? Like, what's the ventilation? And like, there are so many different factors. I mean, obviously, I'm not a firefighter, but a firefighter would understand the domain knowledge of fire and then would also understand how to implement the technique. So we start to paint a picture where you go, okay, I get that there's two different fields here. So when we are talking about areas such as personal protection, self-defense, whatever you want to call it, where it is an alive thing, information is obviously very, very important. However, and this would be the best way for me to sum it up, you have to be educated enough on your own to understand how to find the right information. Okay, and I'm just going to add this in and then you can throw your 2 cents in. I say that the individual has to be educated enough on their own to be able to then start to look to source out the correct information, because information is just information. One more step into that is finding the correct fucking information, and how these individuals can educate themselves is by understanding what their problem is. What is your problem? Because you probably don't understand the solution. And matter of fact, that's what we're talking about. You don't even know where to look because the information's not cataloged like it would be. Like, the first thing I do if I have a problem with my dishwasher is I look up obviously I know the make of it, and I look up the model number. Like, that's the first thing I do. So my problem exists on this dishwasher. This is the model number. And then I say, and it's leaking from the top, it's leaking from the bottom, it's making a funny noise, it's not spinning, it's not drying, whatever it is. I identify the problem. So I have to know those every time. Then I go to my Google search and say, my dishwasher X model, here's the serial number, is doing X, Y, and Z. And then I get the catalog of information. So I want people to understand how that framework and that dichotomy works, because it will be the same for violence. Meaning, if you're saying, well, I'm interested in taking something, and see how I started there generally, because what does that mean? Are you interested in learning a martial art? Because I used to watch ninja shows movies when I grew up, and I don't give a shit if it has practical application or not. I want to learn ninjutsu. Why? Because I want to do some ninja shit. You know what I mean? Or you're like, I want to learn karate. I want to learn kickboxing. I watched, you're 9 years old when I saw my first UFC fight, and I'm obsessed with mixed martial arts. I'm obsessed with whatever it is. What do you want? Or you have to go, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. But I got married a year ago, and we just found out my wife's pregnant. We got our first child on the way. It's not just me anymore, and this world isn't getting safer. It's not getting better. It's getting worse, and I am now responsible for 2 other lives. And now you start going, well, that's a problem. And what's the problem? The problem's not that you're having a family and getting married. The problem is you understand that there's evil in this world. There's bad people in this world. And if you give them even half an opportunity, they'll fucking hurt you. They'll take it. They'll destroy. They don't care. So now you understand the problem. Then you can start looking for a bit of a solution. Now, I know you'll agree with me on this, but what I just said is the beginning of understanding the problem. Because unfortunately, you need a little bit more information, because otherwise you can go, well, you can find a mixed martial art or a sport or a traditional art that, is about fighting, but isn't about defending against real world violence. They're separate things. So, and that's kind of, again, why we do the podcast and all this stuff. But the information has to be specific. So I don't know if that churned anything in your mind that you want to add into it for people.
Well, but yeah, for me, in a way, you kind of took the words out of my mouth, because just, again, going back to like the home repair type videos and stuff like that, to me, those things are very black and white. It's like you said, if the dishwasher's leaking, if whatever the problem might be, if the control board needs to be replaced, like, that's it. There's no debate. Yeah. It's not like, oh no, I'm not going to change the control board. I'm going to replace the door seal. Yeah, but you don't have a leak. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so easy for people to catalog that for you. Yeah. But in something like violence, it's not black and white, it's gray. At least to the uneducated eye, it's gray. And it's like, well, then how do you catalog something that's gray? And like you said, you can Google martial arts, self-defense, whatever, just like a dishwasher, but you're going to get this massive return of information. And you go, well, which one's right? How do I see black and white out of this gray color. And then, so to me, it's like when I said you took the words out of my mouth, it's like, because like you said, well, how well do you understand the problem? How well do you understand what violence really is? Because the better you understand violence and the problem it poses, the easier it is for you to see the solution and take black and white from that gray, right?
Yeah, 100%. I love what you said is answering that question, which one is right? Because that is the problem. Which one is right? And that is where you have to really, and that's why we always tell people, right? You know, it's so funny because people will be like, you know, if I talk to somebody new, they'll always say, oh, you know, I saw maybe an ad of yours, or I talked to a buddy really quick and he gave me your number, whatever it is. But he's like, oh, can you explain to me what you guys do? And it's always like, well, I could try. But what I would rather do that has more benefit is explain to you what criminals do. And it's kind of like, what? It's like, I'd rather spend the first 10, 15 minutes of our conversation talking about violence. I would rather share stories of clients that I've had over the past, 30 years that have been the victims of violence, the targets of violence, talking about, critical incidents and violent incidents that we've studied and researched and followed, cases where people have lost lives to violence, and give you an understanding of what is going on in our communities and in our cities and in our world as it pertains to violence. Because if we spent even 10 minutes doing that, then what happens is now they have a clearer picture of what the problem is. And then as I begin to talk about, quote unquote, our solutions, people start to recognize, like, again, now it's like, well, before I can tell you about how much the part costs and how to put the part in and all this other stuff, I got to first find out what the model number is, what the make is, all that stuff. So it's the same thing. How much do you know about violence? Because the people that call me that have been the victim of violence, I don't need to explain it to them. It's like they're calling going, I have the problem. 3 guys tried to murder me. You know what I mean? 3 guys, 2 guys did this. I was stabbed. I was shot. My wife's ex-husband shot me 5 times. And now the fucker is getting out of jail. Like, these people, they already know what model and make they're dealing with. And so the solution is, now I can say, well, this is what we do. And so the correct information and saying which one is right, this is what unfortunately has led us all in our realm of personal protection, self-defense, to an information overload. People suffer greatly from an information overload. And let me just, what got me thinking about why I wanted to review these or share these with people and help clear this up is because I did a phone call the other day with a new prospect, a potential, a client. And we were, I don't know, normally I like to do them face-to-face, just circumstances dictated that we did it on the phone. And so I think we were less than 60 seconds into the conversation. And the gentleman said that, I don't need to know how to fight. I already know how to fight. I've been in a ton of fights. And then, which 3 seconds later followed with like, yeah, I'm good on that. I just black out. And it's like, we've heard this. I mean, I've heard this a lot. Okay. And what got me thinking of that is like, well, here's part of what the problem is. He is actually suffering from, not delusional. I don't think he's lying. Like, he's suffering from information overload. And how I make the connection of those two things is when somebody's like, listen, like, you called for a reason. Like, you didn't just call because you wanted to have a conversation and make sure that I knew who, I don't know you, but make sure that I knew you knew how to fight. Like, but he's like, no, I already know how to fight. And why I say that's information overload is because he's surrounded his whole life with all these images of what fighting is, right? Like, these guys, John Wayne, fucking big haymaker, he hit the guy in the face, this happens there. John Wick, I see him fight 50 guys. Like, just a fight. UFC, I see throwing punches. Maybe the odd kick or the stomp on the ground. They go, well, that's I've done that, right? I've blacked out and just thrown punches at people. And so therefore I know how to fight. And it's like all of this information and stimulus has no, I'm going to use your word again, It's not cataloged in any way, shape, or form. It's just a bunch of information. And so then you look at yourself and go, well, I have done some things like this, right? Like I've thrown punches. Like there's no context for, for what the second part is for actual implementation. And so this information overload, it actually gets people to believe that, like they don't believe they even own the problem. And it is so funny because again, yet he called. Why would you call then? Because somewhere inside of you, you understand that there is a problem out there to which you do not have the solution, at least to the degree to which you are comfortable and certain. Right? Like there's no guarantees in this world, but you can have certainty.
And I have to, obviously I don't know, I don't know the individual you're speaking of, but I can probably pretty accurately infer that wasn't just like this little tiny voice somewhere inside, because that's not enough to get someone to make that phone call. Mm-hmm. Like that phone call is not an easy call to make for most people.
Yeah.
So that voice in some way is yelling, there's a problem here. Yeah. We have a shortcoming here. Yeah. Like, I don't doubt for a second you probably will black out and just go crazy, and maybe sometimes that works. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a gambler. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And there's obviously a part of this individual too that's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, that's a lot of risk, I'm assuming. Yeah. And I don't know that I'm comfortable with that anymore. Yeah. So I make a phone call. Mm-hmm. But then you run into other paradigms and maybe, limiting beliefs and different things, like conflicting beliefs. And then all of a sudden now you're not ready to move forward like you thought you were.
Yes. 100%. And you're 100% correct with that. Matter of fact, and in almost every conversation like that, and he was no different, was saying that, I think what could benefit me is the psychology of it. Like learning to better regulate my mind and take control. But physically, I'm 100% like I know how to fight. And it's like, well, and again, once we broke down and went into the realities of criminal violence, see, once I was able to give him the right information, because the second that because he shared with me, as they all do, they share stories. Because the second you say, I already know how to fight, I get stories from grade 4 to high school, to college, to bar days. I mean, I get all of the social proof stories, and it's all the same thing. Where it's like, at one point, anyways, that'll send me on a tangent. But you get all these social proof stories, but what you're really hearing is anti-social aggression. You're not hearing violence. So the second that I was able to listen to it all and say, I totally get that. However, and the second that I painted 3 different scenarios that were real cases of criminal violence, and one of which was something one of our members has faced, so it's a real event that happened, and the other 2 were off court cases that we followed in transcripts and understanding what happened, but all here in Edmonton. And the second I painted all 3 of those scenarios, I wasn't pitching solutions. I gave him the correct information. Just, you remember that, I don't know, for a lot of people, I'm going to date myself here, but Detective Joe Friday, that back in the day, there was an old radio program which became movies and stuff, but it's called Dragnet. And Detective Joe Friday had this big saying, would always say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. When I laid out the facts, which was the correct information of how real-world violent criminals are committing rapes, assaults, and murders, when I laid that out for him, the contrast between his quote-unquote fight stories and the details of true violent assault, the correct information, began to change. It shook his confidence in his own statement. It shook his belief in what he had said, where he's, the statement that I already know how to fight. But fighting has nothing to do with violence. And a matter of fact, I'm just going to make this side tangent point, because there are, for the men out there that have been in some fights, like you have grown up as a kid, I don't care what, like when you have had to get into a fight, whether it's right or wrong, whatever, but it's happened. And you go, listen, there's one thing I know about myself. There's one thing I know about this gentleman. If something was happening to somebody, himself or his family, he is willing to engage. He is willing to engage. And that is something. That is a very powerful something. And as a matter of fact, when I hear that and when I know that about somebody, it is even more important that I can hopefully try to get them to understand that that is why you need to educate yourself on truly how to weaponize against criminal violence, meaning you don't know how to fight. You don't understand the strategies, the tactics, and the tools. You are what we call untrained and unrestrained. And so I kind of think it was okay for us to go into these stories a bit because I'm trying to show the impact that information overload has on people. And that's one aspect of it where you have this guy that's like, oh no, I already know how to fight because all this information, and he's, oh yeah, I look like that. I've done some of that. Therefore, I got it all. I know how to do this. When it's like, have you had any training in your life? No, I've had no training. Well, forget tough. There's no such thing as tough anymore. It's trained or untrained. Like if you don't understand the difference of that, any tough guy could go be a Navy SEAL. But that's like saying that they have no skill sets. It's like, no, they are trained. They are trained and restrained and weaponized and surgical. And it's like, that is what you should need. Like, and here's the thing, you say, well, yeah, but they're defending our country. Yeah, well, you're defending your fucking family. And as much as I love my country, family first. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I got my kids, like, you know, that there is nothing more important. So if you're looking for a rationalization or motivation as to why you should be trained and restrained and put in the time and the hours and the sacrifice and money that it takes to become trained and restrained, I shouldn't have to say any more than that. Okay, so the information overload, that is one way. Too much information, I already know how to fight, blah, blah, blah. The second way is all that information, there is so much information, and they say, I don't fucking even know. I don't know shit. And there's so much information, I don't know which is right, which is why your question was powerful. Which one is right? Here's all this information, which is right. And the solution to avoiding the information overload is the law of specificity. You actually have to sit down, take a pen, get out a piece of paper, and start writing down, what am I concerned about? What's my problem? And just be honest. Like, I have always said it, to picture two scenarios in your head. You spend 2 years training. Let's just say a year. You go train, fuck it, let's go 6 months. You train for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, do you see yourself in an auditorium full of people and somebody wearing a striped shirt or a shirt that says referee on it is holding your hand up, or you're standing on the top of a podium and somebody's handing you a trophy or a medal, and you've just placed first in some sort of a competition? Or 6 months from now, do you see yourself, at home, hugging your wife and children, calming everybody down, on the phone with the police, giving a statement about how you just defended yourself from 2 or 3 attackers that tried to ambush you as you came out of a restaurant late at night from dinner or whatever time of day it was, and you effectively defended yourself by not only seeing the threat as it was evolving, taking decisive action that neutralized the threat, and then successfully egressing you and your entire family out of there safely. You know what I mean? Like, which of those scenarios appeals to you most? And that's just one exercise. And if people go, no, the second one, like, that's all I care about is wanting to be safe, then start looking into violence. Start studying violence. Read court transcripts of violent assaults where people, A, defended themselves, or B, lost their lives to violent criminals. And look at the details. And that starts putting a blueprint in your mind. How are these individuals committing home invasions? You know, we had 2 cases in Canada. There's actually more than that. But outside of a Tim Hortons, one in Vancouver, one in Calgary. The one in Vancouver, a man is there with his wife and his 3-year-old daughter. He asks a gentleman to not vape around his child. Obviously, he was vaping and the smoke was affecting his child. He asks him not to do that. The man pulls out a knife and stabs him to death in front of his wife and daughter. So, loses his life, and his 3-year-old daughter has to witness this. In Calgary, inside of a Tim Hortons, a group of young kids, start an argument. They get in an argument with a man. They leave the premises, but they're waiting outside the Tim Hortons. The man steps out of the Tim Hortons as he's leaving. The altercation sparks back up, and a 13-year-old boy pulls out a knife and stabs the man. He's in serious but stable condition in a Calgary hospital. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, which of these scenarios, we start studying these things, and you start saying, listen, I don't want to get stabbed to death. I don't want my children to have to witness that over vaping. And we've talked about this lots before, but How many violent assaults and deaths, murders happen over nothing? Tons, right? People have a hard time wrapping their brain around that. But when you start exploring the problem and you can say to yourself, like, this is what I'm concerned with. I do not know what to do in that situation. I wouldn't know physically, mentally, I wouldn't know what to do. Now you can start, now solutions will make sense. Now you know the model and the make of the problem you're facing. And now you can find the information, the correct information that you need to start solving the problem. And here's the thing. You do not want to overload. You figure out what you need to figure out, the model, make, whatever of the problem, own the problem, find the correct information. And once you find it, the right information and the right person that has that information that resonates with you. They can't just have the right information. They have to resonate with you, meaning you have to like who they are. They have to vibe with you. They have to speak to you. They have to connect to you. You have to have that feeling and say, yeah, these are my people. This person's like me. And now you have that connection, and then stop. Stop gathering information. How many guys do we've ever had come through with us that need us? I know that their problem is the problem that we solve. They know it is. They know we have the solution. I know there's a connection. I know they're good people. They connect, we vibe, and yet we don't see them for 3 years, 5 years, in a few cases, 10 years, a decade. And then something has typically happened. They come back, and then they're like, why didn't I start this 10 years ago? Because you got caught in information overload. You understood the problem, which is not easy to do. You searched and you found a solution that fit with you. You found somebody that resonated with you. But then what you did is said, you know what? I'm going to do a little more research. I'm going to gather a little bit more information. I'm going to look around a little bit more. And then the information overload stalls out the process. And next thing you know, years have passed by and you have been stuck in information overload. Right? Happens all the time. Okay, so the next step we move to is implementation. So information, the negative is the overload, and implementation is underload. Okay, so let me ask you, in your opinion, what does implementation mean to you?
For sure, part of it is, what do I do with this information? How do I make it functional for me? And not just me specifically, but like, how do I do it? You know what I mean? Like, again, going back to the dishwasher thing. If the video just tells you, okay, if you're having these problems, blah, 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 and you're like, yep, that's my problem. So like, okay, then all you need to do is change out this control board. Best of luck. And you're like, I'm going to need a little more than that. I need to know how to implement that information. So I think that, for me, that's a big, big part of it, is just, once you have that right information, how do you actually put that into action? And that's a large part of what implementation means.
Perfect. Now, if we take that and we peel some layers back on that, I would look at it two ways. Most people would look at implementation, I think most people would look at it and say, oh yes, you're going to teach me how to do the moves. Like, as just a very generalization of that. Meaning implementation of like, oh, you're giving me the information of the how to do it, and now you're standing there making sure that I practice it. Like, I practice my kicks. I do 10,000 kicks, 10,000 punches, 10,000 whatever it is. And you say that's implementation, is just repping it out. Practice, 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 practice. Now, for us, we did a podcast on this: learn, practice, master, functionalize, maintain. Those are the 5 stages of learning. So you think, oh, implementation is progressing through this. Learn it, then practice it, master it, which doesn't mean perfection. It just means you can do it viscerally. Functionalizing, which means make sure it's not just, technically pretty and stuff and sound, but it actually is functional. You can actually fight with it, not just do it. And then maintenance. Now, that's part of it. But implementation for me is much deeper as it pertains to the 3 pillars. People suffer from drastic under-implementation. Now, I'm not saying that they suffer from a lack of practice alone. No. I think the deeper parts of this is not only the flight time, the practicing it, but it is having a coach or an organization, and this is our philosophy on it, that when I look at implementation and I know that 99% of all people that come to me, their greatest stumbling block is the implementation piece. It's not the information piece. We got all the information. It's out there, easily sourced. We have it all cataloged. We can provide that information to people. It's the implementation. Now, if all I did was worry about and think of implementation one-dimensionally, meaning when they show up for their private, I work them. Like I'm right there. Okay, do 1 more rep, 5 more reps, 10 more reps. Let me count it out for you. Okay, let's go again. Dog, have a quick drink. Let's get back at it. That's one thing. We have to look at implementation into their life, into their schedule, right? Into how do we permeate this and help them create the routines? How do we help this integrate this into their family's structure? Like for us, you are weaponizing, meaning that you're becoming a different person. You're weaponizing your mind and your body, meaning you are developing defensive strategies, not just for yourself, but for your family, for your children, for your extended family, for your communities, for your neighborhood. It is, how do we integrate all of this into your life? That is a lot of deep dives into like their core beliefs, the beliefs of their family. Here's how I can best sum this up. Hopefully that gives people at least an idea or a sense of how deep the waters are when it comes to implementation. I'll try to shortcut this. To truly prevent underload of implementation, somebody has to be paying attention to you. And I hope that people get what I mean when I say that. And let me just use myself an example. I was the victim of an attempted murder, right? I had done martial arts, all that shit, right? I was broken, fucked up, all that type of stuff. When I found my mentors, right? These guys were training the Navy SEALs at the time. They were working with every tier 1, like CIA, DA, like they were tier 1 guys. Tier 1 guys. I was this young, early 20s, guy that had been almost killed, murdered. And I was fucked up. But you know what these guys did? They didn't just give me the correct information. That was my first blessing. These guys understood violence. So they had the correct information. I knew it. But the second thing they did was they paid attention to me like I was a Navy SEAL. Do you get what I mean? Like they were being paid very well by a tier 1 government organization to train some of the most elite warriors in the world in their hand-to-hand combat, edge and impact weapons and all that stuff. And yet in their off time, when they came home on leave, they weren't even really teaching public at the time. I don't even want to say they took me on as a student because it wasn't this teacher-student relationship. But when they agreed, they said like, when I'm back, if you're here, when they allowed me proximity to them, they paid attention as if I was their most important client. And so understand that, to me, how you stop underload of implementation is it's got to be relational. How do you really help somebody really integrate it so that the information that you're teaching somebody, how do you really how do I know that you're really going to pull the trigger on this? How do I know that you're really going to be able to do this, that this is really anchoring in the deepest, most meaningful way? It has to be it throughout their entire life. And you can't help them do that if you don't know who they are, if you don't actually have a relationship with these people. But once that relationship is built, then it's a whole different world. And I wanted to say it this way because I think that's a reflection of our journey together. You've been with me for over 20 years, like 23 years. And I think that you're in a very unique position to talk about this because A, you can remember back to what it was like in the very beginning, and you have 23 plus years coming on here of like experience. And I think you're going to understand what I'm talking about and the importance of it. And hopefully you can, share with other people insights that they might not have because most people haven't experienced this.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even before getting in to the training side of it, because this is just what was hitting me as you were speaking. Because where I feel this the most right now in my life, or let's say even the last 7 years, is in a different space altogether. Because I'm fortunate, I've got the three pillars all figured out when it comes to weaponizing, because I've been doing this for 23 years.
Yeah.
So where I first related in the conversation to what you're talking about in my life is in health and nutrition. Because like one of my hobbies, because it's more of a hobby than a lifestyle for me, is health and nutrition. So I am constantly like taking in information, going through like what you talked about, information overload, but then trying to make that shift from all that information to how do I implement this in my life. And so like the struggle is real, like you talked about with people learning to try to understand violence and how to protect themselves from it. It's no different than that. It's like, okay, so I get all this information about these are the supplements that I've decided I want to take because I think they're going to be best for me. And I want to be doing some sauna, and I want to be doing some cold exposure, and I want to be doing this with my sleep. And I get all these great ideas, and like a lot of it I implement. But then inevitably what happens? Things fall off, and then you try to implement some different things, and then that falls off, and you go back to the first things, and you just constantly feel like you're trying to juggle, but you're always dropping balls. And so I can relate 100% when it comes to that sort of aspect of my life. And as you said, it's like, well, when you have a coach or a mentor, all of a sudden, how much more does that stuff come online? How much easier is it when someone can say like, well, no, I want you to take exactly these. And if they were to call you or text you and say, hey, did you take those this morning? Oh yeah, geez, right, thanks. Boom, take your supplement, done. Perfect. Oh, hey, did you hit the sauna today? Did you do whatever workout you were going to do today? Like you told me you were going to do this, this, and this. Did you do that? I mean, how much more successful would I be if I had that person? I'm trying to be that person for myself, with some success, because obviously we're very driven. We understand the process. So it's a little bit easier to try and, do better on your own. But at the end of the day, it's not the same. It's not the same as having someone to walk you through implementing all this information you've sorted through. And one other thing I want to say kind of jumps back a little bit in the conversation is, because again, this personal experience where I think people sometimes struggle with the information overload is the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Because I for sure suffer from that. I fully understand you have to shut off the tap of information at some point to really truly successfully implement and then move on to customization. But there's definitely a part of me that struggles because I'm like, yeah, but what if the information changes? You know what I mean? Or just what if something new, some new development comes out? Well, I want to know about that. So it's like there's that resistance to shutting off the information, and obviously control follows awareness. So I think, again, coming back now to weaponizing and violence, that's how important it is for people to understand why these three pillars are so important. Because if you don't understand that it's even a thing, well, then you have zero chance of controlling it, right?
Yeah.
So. But and then I guess to expand that now back into what you actually asked with like the whole training side of things, I mean, yeah, I think over the years that's the change I've seen more than anything else is this exact process we're talking about. Not in the beginning, like not that it was ever just all information, it never was. But I think it's just the systems got better. Things got more refined, defined. You understood the process you were going through. And maybe just as I'm talking out loud, maybe that's even more what it was. I think in a sense, the system was always there as the undercurrent, but I didn't understand it was there. I was just sitting in the boat going along for the ride. But as time went on, it was like, oh no, like there's something happening underneath this boat. Well, what is that? And so getting and owning a deeper understanding of like information, implementation, customization, I think that's what's changed the most is just the ability for everybody to understand what's actually happening as it's happening. In the beginning, like you said, with your instructors even, it was just they were looking out for me. They had my best interest. I just showed up and just did exactly what they said.
Yeah.
You didn't have to know why necessarily. You were going to get good regardless because of what they knew. And it was the same when I started with you. I got good regardless because of what you knew, because of what you were doing in a sense to me.
Yeah.
But then after it hit a point where it was kind of like, oh shit, like this can be even better if everybody understands what's actually going on.
Yeah. Everything you said, I couldn't agree with more. And I'm so glad that you gave the health and fitness analogy because, again, like we're not selling our shit on here. We are trying to share with people immutable concepts that apply to weaponizing, but they apply to everything. And so we all suffer from this. And I said at the beginning, information, implementation, and customization, these are the three secret pillars to mastering anything. right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, and that is what is happening more and more in the world today, is we are on information overload. And so your analogies of how we all suffer from it and how it pertains to health and fitness, I mean, it makes the picture even clearer. And then as you carried it forward, like you said, a few key things again, and one of which was the word mentor, which is huge. And just your last analogy of saying, like, when I started my instructors, yeah, I didn't understand this process, and they didn't try to teach me this process because I had so many other things that I needed to be doing, but they understood it, and they understood they understood that it had to be relational. And one of the things is, like, I've only ever trained out of houses. And I love that. I'm not saying I've never been to gyms. My kickboxing career and all that stuff are all in gyms and all that kind of stuff. But even with that, when I was a sparring partner for the two pro fighters, it was very out of the house type stuff because it was the three of us. It wasn't big gym group, never group class settings. And so why? Because why did the very best in the world do this? Because it's relational. And they understood that if this has any chance of success, I needed to accept them as a mentor. Right? I like, that's the role. It wasn't as a teacher, it was as a mentor. Now, teachers can be mentors, but I just wanted to mean, like, we actually had to like each other and get along and share core beliefs. We didn't have to share all the same beliefs, but fundamentally we had to share core beliefs. That's something that most mentors and mentees, I guess is the word, but that's something that they share, is they have a core belief, right? So, or a majority of core beliefs. So that other side is very, very important. And that's what it comes back to. Like, someone has to be paying attention to you, and they have to care enough to genuinely want the best for you. And that is why, like, for me, that's why I like to meet people face to face. That's why I like to have conversations. It is often that I have several meetings with people and several conversations with people in all different formats, in person, through texting, through emails, like on the phone, because I'm investing in making sure that the ingredients are there for us to have a good connection. Because if it wasn't there, you may actually have the problem that I know I can solve. I have the correct information. I have the understanding of the process of implementation and customization. But if we don't mesh, then I would try to help them find somebody that can help them, that they could connect with. And that's what I said earlier about this person has to resonate with you. And sometimes you can't put your finger on it as to why they do or they don't. You can say, listen, I've talked to them. I think they're great people, but I just don't know if we have that kind of deeper connection. It's just got to be a little bit of something, and then that builds. Right? I'm not talking about finding your soulmate here. I'm talking about, like, you have, again, someone that you have a respect for. Okay. Not just someone who you like, yeah, they're okay. You have to have that respect. Okay. So, and now I'm going to jump a bit, right? Because this is where, again, I think implementation underload happens, because the majority of self-defense training and personal protection training occurs in a group class setting. It occurs in a commercial building. And there's nothing wrong with this from the standpoint of people who are trying to make a living. And people are helping people get into shape. They're teaching them discipline. They're teaching them focus. They're teaching them, how to sacrifice and how to struggle. And there's all these great benefits that happen. And they're trying to do it out of a place of business commercially, where you have overhead to pay and rent to pay and instructor fees to pay and insurance premiums and all this kind of stuff. And so you want, the typical goal is get a group class and add as many people as you can to it. And then the odd few that are really dedicated, rise to the top, will get some preferential treatment. They'll get like a fighter's class, or kind of an advanced class, or kind of a late Friday night class, or something like that. But the majority of people at that school will only ever get implementation through the course curriculum that is outlined for every single person that walks through that door. And that is limiting. That is always going to be a recipe for under implementation. And that's why there's typically a very high turnover rate and a very high attrition rate. What is it? Less than 1% of people that start something like jiu-jitsu make it to black belt. I think that would probably be in all belted arts, right? You know what I mean? So Why is that? Well, that's under implementation. That's not because there's not the correct information. That's because there's under implementation. And then maybe this will segue us into the third one, which is customization. And customization, I said, there's typically no load. And so just setting that up real quick, no load means that very few people have somebody who has the correct information, who is genuinely paid attention and been and is paying attention to them long enough and deep enough to truly understand how to customize it for them. Because I'm not talking customization as in, you buy a new car from me and you walk in and say, listen, it comes with black seats, but I want black seats with red stripes. Can you do that? And I say, sure, I'll send them out and have them, custom covered for you. No, it's the same as I'm not saying customization is like, oh, let me develop a specific technique for you, or let me show you how you need to position your hips because you have a little bit of an impingement in one of your hips. That is part of customization, but that isn't even the tip of the iceberg. Or maybe I should say that is only the tip of the iceberg. The true customization, in my mind, is the adaptability that can only come about from when you understand who somebody is as a person, who they are, who their beliefs are, what their paradigms are, what their fears are, what their passions are, what their true motivations are, what their emotional makeup and intelligence is. Like, that is the only time that you can truly deeply customize something for somebody, like true personal customization. Think about the time that has to come into that. And I would probably say that, you could probably think back on a time when you were early in your training with me, where we were going through this process, right? But we were still getting to know each other. And I'm sure at that time I customized some things for you. I looked at you, I paid attention to you, I saw things that you were doing, and I said, hey, Dustin, why don't you try this? You're a little bit shorter than me. There's guys that I know that I'm training with down in California stuff that are your body type, and they do this and they do it very well. Try that. Great, it's customization. But as the years went on and I got to know you better, our relationship deepened. The biggest customization that has probably come in our journey, from my perspective, has happened because I know who you are. Like, I know you, just like you got to know me, which then built the trust for you then to lean into any advice that I might offer you. And I'll just say real quick, the greatest part about this whole process and why these pillars, one of their secret powers, is it's reciprocal. The implementation has helped. I've learned how to better implement my own skills because I'm paying attention to you and the rest of my students and really getting to know you and caring about that. And as well as the customization, the aha moments, and all knowledge, ultimately at the end of the day, is self-knowledge. So even when you're helping to share knowledge to somebody else, it is always a reflector back onto you. So it's that's an amazing power of this process. But I'll throw that to you with what your thoughts are.
One thing I'll say about the customization, because I remember it clearly, and you will too when I start to talk about it. But one thing for me that had a big impact was it was a customization, but psychologically, because as you got to know me better in doing scenario training, you learned that for him, one of the bigger struggles is the anticipation, which it is for a lot of people. But it used to really that's where my SNS really got me. It was waiting for my turn. It wasn't going into a scenario and then the SNS comes, like it does, and then there's that you still got to deal with that. But for me, the SNS was always way worse in the staging area, and so my thing was always I just want to go first. And once you caught on to that, as you got to know me better, you were like, he's going to go last every time. and it became an ongoing joke. It was kind of we both knew before anything happened, we knew who was going last without it having to be said, because you just understood that this is what he needs. And so every time I had to go last until I got to a point where I was no, it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't bother you.
Because I got so good at having to deal with the SNS of that anticipation through all the different skill sets we had. That I got to a point where I was whatever, come what may. Do you know what I mean? So it's but without that relationship that you're talking about, I may have still got there, but man, it would have taken 10x the time. Yeah. But because you understood what I most needed and were able to provide it for me, whether no matter how much I didn't want it, And that's the thing too, is, and here I'll toot my own horn, and like you said, it's reciprocal. It's like, I also understood he's doing this because it's exactly what I need. And then I was able to lean into that and be like, okay, if this is what I need, then how do I conquer this? Well, I have all these different skill sets for dealing with SNS, so I'll implement those. And then yeah, after enough time, I'm like, oh, now it doesn't even matter. I don't care when my turn is, sort of thing, right? So
Yeah.
for me, that was a huge one in my journey for sure, and probably because going through it caused a lot of pain, so to speak,
Yeah.
but not physical pain, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful example, and yeah, the sex starts. I was laughing because, but it did. I remember you leaning in a lot to the whole "well, come what may," right? And then that forced you to develop those inner control box tools, which now have
Totally.
served you in every aspect of your life. But that was the catalyst for like figure this shit out, right? And that's exactly what it is. And I just have written in my notes here because it's kind of one of my core beliefs of. But when I talk about customization and talk about the adaptability of things, it can only happen when someone knows you, not just sees you. And maybe that's a good differentiation, is that they don't just see you every day or every Tuesday or whatever. They're actually invested and know you on a deeper level to do the example, like you said, like to really give you what you want. And I just really wanted to echo that. That is so important, that throughout the whole process, you became part of the solution, meaning you understood why I was doing it. And and wanted it because you understood, this is the implementation. He's forcing, like he's saying, he needs to integrate these skills in my life. This is the implementation, and he's doing it by customizing. Not just saying I don't care what order people go in, or whatever it is and stuff, right? So, and that is again, like, I think hopefully we've done a decent job tonight of like, again, like the secret, and the only thing that is secret about it is how much juice is in the squeeze, right? When you start exploring these secret pillars, the more you explore these and peel back layers, the more juice you're getting out of the squeeze. That is the secret, because people often they don't get it. They don't get any juice out of it, or they get very little and they throw it down thinking that there's nothing left there. But it is so not true. And this is just another immutable concept. I'll give you this one. This is free of charge as well. But is that it's the simple things done well and done deep that make the difference. Like that's what leads to world-class skill, world-class understanding, expertise, whatever it is. That's the shit that translates into life-saving skill sets. Simple things, and you go fucking deep. But most people with simple things, they see it, they taste it, they discard it because it's simple. And so they believe that simplicity has no beauty. Simplicity is just simple, and it's plain, and it's blah, but it's like, it's not. The simplicity is where the beauty lies. It's where depth lies. It's where work lies. It's all that stuff. And so information implementation, customization, you got to prevent information overload. You have to really understand how not to be implementation underload, and then make sure that you're building relationships with people that will allow you to get any type of load, or the right type of load you need for the customization side of it, because that again is where people tend to struggle. So I think we've probably hammered this as far as we need to for tonight. Is there more? Yes, there's more. My final thing is, when it comes to information, you need the correct information. When it comes to implementation, you need someone that is paying attention to you, genuinely, deeply paying attention to you, not just in your class, not just in your training time, but they have a vested interest in paying attention to what's going on in your life, figuring out who you are. And then as far as customization is, that's what's going to allow them to help you implement and customize, is because they know you, not just see you. So that would be my final wrap up for that. That is why we do private training. That is the core tenet of the weaponization process. We are a relational based company. We invest the time to get to fucking know people before they even start. And then when they do start, we're all in. It's always all in from day one, right? So, Dustin, any final thoughts on the three pillars, the three secret pillars?
Yeah, no, I think the summary you just gave, I think, was perfect. It covered everything and summarized it really well. So I'm good.
Okay. Awesome then. Okay, well, I will thank you for your time once again, for joining me each week and helping share your experience and wisdom and insights. It is deeply appreciated by me and everybody that listens to this, I'm sure. Brad will be back next week. Again, we have, over the last couple of weeks, I have asked you guys to take some time to comment wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave a comment, give us a like, a follow. And if you feel we're worthy of it, a 5-star rating helps us to reach more good people. I don't normally look at the stats from our podcast. The other day I took a quick look at them. I'll do it every 4 or 5 months, and we have seen a really nice growth in our podcast, especially in the last few weeks. As I've been asking people, that's the only ask I have from people, is to take the time, if you enjoy this, to please share it, rate us. 5 stars. This is what helps us grow it. We're seeing the impact of your actions. I deeply appreciate that. I'm going to ask you, if you haven't done that, it takes less than 90 seconds. Please do it. As well, feel free to follow us on YouTube. If you might be watching us on YouTube, or on Facebook at Awaken the Protector Within. Also, you can follow us on Instagram. And we have lots of free information, lots of resources for people that are serious about wanting to take responsibility for their life, liberty, freedom, security. It is up to us to weaponize our minds and our bodies to prepare, again, to survive, not just survive, but thrive in the face of violent criminal assault. And I believe that the world needs warriors and protectors, men that are ready, real resilient, relentless, and ruthless, more now than ever before. So we are moving the needle slowly, but we are moving it. As always, we are committed to organic growth. We are committed to relational growth. And so I just wanted to send my thanks to everybody that's helping us do this. So this is our mission and life passion. So all right, everybody, until next time, please stay safe, stay weaponized. We're going to chat again soon, everybody.